This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our December Board of Selectmen meeting. I'm Mike Frieda, North Haven's first Selectman. I'm joined, as always, by our second Selectman, Mr. William Piper, and our third Selectwoman, Ms. Sally Buemi. We have taken off our masks. We are socially distanced here at Town Hall, and once again, welcome to our meeting. I'd like to start by asking everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 3 on tonight's agenda, the approval of the minutes of the Board of Selectmen meeting from November 5th. Sally and Bill, can I entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the November 5th minutes.
I'll second Sally's motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We're going to dispense with item number 4 this evening. I'd like to immediately go into item number 5, and I'd like to give a brief overview. Sally has asked to have this put on the agenda. I'll turn it over to her in a second before we bring in our Fire Chief, Paul Januszewski. We have our Fire Commission Chairman, Mr. Pat Nozzolillo here, and our Town Attorney, Mr. Jeff D'Onofrio, all of whom have joined us tonight on a Zoom meeting format, and you will see them on the respective TVs that we have here. So this is a very important topic that Ms. Buemi asked to have on the agenda. I'd like to say that this topic involves the town taking back the PSA, commonly called a PSAR. And this is a subject that I have supported right from day one in conjunction with our fire chief, our fire commission, and we think that it's the best for the town as it supports the emergency management plan that the fire chief put together back in 2019. So before I turn it over to our chief, Paul Januszewski, I'd like to turn it over to Sally for some brief comments as to why she asked to put this on the agenda. Sally?
Yes, thank you, Michael. Back on November 23rd, I contacted the first Selectman's office through Mr. Frieda's executive assistant and requested that this be placed on the agenda. For the past several years, the fire department has been central to budgetary discussions. It's been a dominant department in recent budgetary seasons. Obviously, this is of great importance to citizens, and I felt that this being the Board of Selectmen meeting, which is the most watched meeting of all the boards and commissions, it was a great opportunity for not only me, but our citizens to have a full understanding of not only what the PSR means to the town, but how it will impact the nature and quality of medical services. So I requested it on November 23rd. My request was granted on November 23rd. So I appreciate the vast cooperation, and I thank Chief Januszewski and Chairman Nozzolillo and Town Council D'Onofrio for being here to give us this presentation tonight. So thank you again.
You're welcome, Sally.
Okay.
So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see shortly the TV sets, and I'd like to turn it over to our esteemed Fire Chief, Chief Paul Januszewski. Paul?
Thank you all for the opportunity tonight. I agree it's definitely worthwhile that we have this conversation about what the PSA means to the town and the citizens of North Haven. So I'm prepared tonight to discuss the PSA process at length if needed, but really feel that I can answer a majority of the questions by covering the historical context of what took place. And to do so, I'm just going to, while I realize that for some of you, you may be familiar with what I'm about to present for the viewing audience that is not familiar with the PSA, or how we arrived where we are today. I'd ask your patience as I kind of go through a timeline. And I think the timeline is best to basically depict where we are today. So let's start with what a PSA is. So the PSA is a primary service area, and this has 3 levels associated to it. The first responder level, the basic life support level, and the advanced life support level. The PSA is defined in Connecticut Regulation 19A-179-4, and it is a lengthy definition, but essentially means this. It dictates the agencies that can respond and the departments that can respond to emergency medical incidents within any municipality. This was done a long time ago. It was decided as far as what PSAs were, and it was done so to keep ambulance companies from chasing ambulances to multiple calls. So as you can imagine, 30, 40 years ago, we were in a different place than we are today. And so that's what that regulation was intended to do. The North Haven Fire Department has held the first responder PSA since roughly the 1970s. AMR has held the BLS PSA, which is a majority of all transports, for over 30 years. The ALS PSA was unassigned until 2016 when I pursued it on behalf of the North Haven Fire Department, and that's what really started this transition. So this PSA was assigned to municipalities before municipalities even knew what it really meant. So again, 30, 40 years ago, when PSAs were assigned and divvied up within the state of Connecticut, most towns or fire departments didn't realize the impact it would have much later on. The town of North Haven has been well served by AMR for a number of years. And having worked for the town for 20 years as a paramedic myself, I knew of inconsistencies that were taking place, which led to poor patient care throughout years and a misrepresented image that AMR is providing ample service to the taxpayers in North Haven. Specifically, what we found was there's a lack of transparency. Emergency incidents were taking place for which the fire department was not made aware of. There was no dedicated assets to North Haven. There were regional assets only, and there was no consistency in the ability for AMR to provide a paramedic for the calls which required an ALS response. The taxpayers in North Haven deserve better. And what I mean by that, what was taking place for a long period of time was these regional ambulances were responding to North Haven and the surrounding towns. So what would take place is if Hamden or if New Haven was very busy with lots of medical calls occurring, the taxpayers in North Haven may have to wait 20 plus minutes for an ambulance on the first call. I didn't think that was right, and we wanted to do everything we could to pursue correcting that. So I set out to make sure that we could pursue the PSA and started to research how it could be done. And what we found was there was a bipartisan legislative review final report in 2014. It was entitled Connecticut Emergency Medical Services Primary Service Area Task Force. And it prompted legislation to take place, which allowed for the reassignment of the PSA within municipalities. The first town to do so was Milford in 2017. And it was the only town to have done so prior to our filing for the PSA. Oversight of the EMS system was identified during the fiscal year 17-18 budget, the workshop session which I attended, and I presented a budget in which I proposed hiring deputy chief to oversee EMS and training. The anticipated revenue at that time was expected to be between $200,000 and $275,000. This is not a number that I came up with. This is a number based upon an independent review by an agency that we hired that went out to bid, and it was based upon their review of the calls, the patient census, the demographics of insurance in North Haven, and how often the North Haven Fire Department was responding to calls and providing ALS assist to the area hospitals. In other words, how often our paramedics were riding into the hospitals because the ambulance company provided only 2 EMTs. So I'd ask for those of you that are going to trace this as I go through this timeline to write these down. In fiscal year 16-17, the North Haven Fire Department provided ALS intercept, which means we provided a paramedic to the hospital 310 times. In fiscal year 17-18, we provided paramedic intercept 296 times. I remind you, that was the same fiscal year that we made the presentation to oversee the deputy chief for EMS and training. This is when things began to slide. Fiscal year 18-19, 183 occurrences. In fiscal year 19-20, 74 occurrences. The inconsistencies I referenced earlier persisted, the details of which I won't cover, but significant enough in which I was constantly bringing to the attention of First Selectman Michael Frieda the need to pursue the PSA. Obviously, he was reluctant at first because AMR had served the community for so many years. A number of meetings were held with AMR leadership at town of North Haven in an effort to improve transparency and increase the level of service to North Haven. Empty promises and continued inconsistencies eventually led to the decision by First Selectman Michael Frieda to give me the green light to pursue the PSA on behalf of the town of North Haven. It's important to know EMS response within every municipality is dictated by an EMS plan. This plan is updated every 5 years and filed with the Connecticut Office of Emergency Medical Services. The first order of business, which I tasked newly promoted Deputy Chief Martis with, was updating the EMS plan in 2017. This document provided details on how EMS service within the town of North Haven was to be delivered, regardless of who possessed the PSA. But this document also served as a critical piece over the next year of our pursuit for the PSA. Negotiations with AMR were ongoing during the development of that plan in 2017, which allowed the company to have input on the plan and have some input on the details. However, it was through calendar year 2018 that AMR was closely tracked for compliance with our plan. A meeting was held with AMR in the fall of 2018 with Attorney Jeff D'Onofrio present, during which time AMR was notified of their failure to meet the standards as identified within a 2017 EMS plan. And during that meeting, I formally requested the PSA be turned over to the town of North Haven, for which we were denied. That forced our hand, and that is exactly the same time when our ALS intercepts to the area hospitals began to trend down. The alternate plan had to be filed. It had to be filed in conjunction with our pursuit to take over the PSA. We did so in January of 2019. The initial hearing to our pursuit to take over the PSA occurred on May 30th, 2019. It was followed by a number of hearings in Hartford. The initial ruling was in our favor on January 10th, 2020, to which AMR again filed an appeal. This resulted in additional hearings in Hartford, which then were hampered further by COVID, as we were waiting for the state's decision on the appeal that AMR had filed. On September 25th, 2020, which was a Friday afternoon, the town of North Haven was notified that the hearing officer ruled in our favor and the PSA was now in the possession of North Haven, effective immediately. This put a crunch on us, having that decision effective immediately. It was welcome news and it was good news, but it meant that we really needed to put some plans together right then and there, because at that moment in time, the town of North Haven owned the PSA and everything that took place in town with medical calls. So for that timeline, a portion of 2017, all of 2018, all of 2019, and 9 months of 2020, AMR provided multiple ambulances, and specifically paramedics, which drove down our revenue. I'm convinced this is why the hearings took place as much as they did. AMR certainly was watching all of the public meetings, Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, and Board of Fire Commission meetings, and was watching consistently as this revenue was constantly questioned. I'd ask those of you that have to really look into this to read the transcripts, which are public record, and learn for yourself how this entire hearing went down. Up to this point, our options were somewhat limited in terms of what to do once the PSA was assigned to North Haven. We wanted to make sure that the company we went with had multiple ambulances. They wanted to make sure they were stationed nearby to North Haven. There are a number of ambulance companies in the state of Connecticut, but we want to make sure that their base of operations is somewhere close to North Haven. Why? Because we often find that we need more than 2 ambulances at any given time. We want to make sure that in the event of a mechanical failure of ambulances, the ability to backfill is there. We want to make sure we have good radio communications. We want to make sure that we have the ability to utilize ambulances that are also being used in other towns. So we can't just reach out to another ambulance company, let's say in the Hartford area, that has no base of operations in this area. This really left us with AMR, Nelson, and Hunters as decisions to consider going to. AMR had just finished dragging myself and the town of North Haven through 18 months of legal proceedings with empty promises. In our opinion, AMR is not an option. They had not yet met the terms of the EMS plan that we had identified, and there was no reason to believe they were going to do so now. Hunters, we were made aware of, was pending a purchase by Hartford Hospital. We did not pursue an agreement with Hunters. Nelson, we did pursue an agreement with. It's located directly in North Haven. It's a local taxpayer, and they employ a number of our residents. Shortly after the PSR was assigned to North Haven, we secured a 3-year contract with Nelson at no expense to the town of North Haven. It provided for us the following: 2 dedicated ambulances to the town of North Haven at all times, which consist of 1 ALS and 1 BLS. AMR had dedicated nothing to the town of North Haven specifically. Performance standards of 6 minutes and 59 minutes to respond to priority 1 calls and 10 minutes and 50 minutes for priority 2 calls. AMR provided nothing in terms of performance standards. Direct radio communication with our PSAP, which is our public safety answering point, often known as dispatch, was secured right away. It also includes the ability for my fire apparatus to communicate directly with the ambulances. We now have the ability to track ambulances on GIS mapping to make sure that they're responding to calls as they say they are, and to ensure that the closest ambulance is responding to medical calls. We also have access to patient care reports so that we can ensure that the care being provided by this contracted company meets the standards that we've identified for our citizens. We're also expecting to secure a bundle bill agreement very shortly. It is not yet in place. It was not our priority to secure a bundle billing agreement. We had to get the operations of this entire endeavor under control first. We have an agreement that it is going to be predated back to 10/21 when Nelson took over for our service. So we expect that agreement to be signed. It's in one last stage of legal now. It's been approved by our town attorney. It's been approved by the ambulance. It's in the hands of our billing company right now. But again, there will be no lost revenue that we've experienced because of that delay in signing it. It is worth noting that we did not have a bundle bill agreement with AMR. Because of that, we lost in excess of $100,000 over a 2-year period because we were not able to have a bundle bill agreement. So the assignment of the PSAR to the town of North Haven cannot be taken lightly. We're only the 2nd town to successfully be reassigned to PSAR. We've become the envy of cities and towns throughout the state. Major cities and towns attended these hearings, and dozens have reached out for myself since being awarded the PSAR to find out how we did it. Moving forward, we'll need to ensure that the deputy fire chief responsible for EMS maintains oversight of all EMS response within the town. It's my expectation that revenue will again start to pick back up, as promised for several years. Because for many, it seems that revenue is the most important factor throughout all of this, which I find to be unfortunate considering the immense impact the fire department has had on the overall EMS system within North Haven. 2 ambulances are assigned to North Haven. It may sound like a lot, but I can assure you it's not. It's efficient, it meets the needs and the demand, but it doesn't supplement the fire department's responsibility to provide first responder medical care and ALS to not only support the response of ambulances, but at times still assist with transport of patients. It may be 6 to 9 months before we have a clear picture and understanding of what the future of EMS will look like in North Haven. There's a variety of reasons for that. As we begin to develop this system and as we begin to find out what calls take place in town, I can tell you that in the last 4 weeks, 6 weeks, there are calls occurring in town which we did not previously even know about. So it's going to take us some time to kind of figure out what this system is going to look like moving forward. I'd ask that the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance look favorably upon this transition and know that it's been a long and tedious road, a lot of moving parts, and I want to thank Attorney Jeff D'Onofrio for his representation. It was impeccable throughout the entire process, and it definitely led to the success of the town of North Haven taking over the PSAR. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. I was hoping that by going over this timeline, it would address a lot of concerns or questions that anybody, such as Sally, may have, but certainly let me know if there's anything further I can elaborate on.
Okay, I know we have Jeff here. He's prepared to answer any questions. I'd just like to say how proud I am of Jeff and Paul for the outstanding efforts, along with Scott Martis, our Deputy Chief. I've been actively involved with this, but Attorney D'Onofrio, Chief Januszewski, and Scott Martis really played the predominant role here. The bundle billing agreement that Paul talked about is very important because it means that the carrier, Nelson, will remit fair market value reimbursement back to the town of North Haven for our transports. So that's a very important component. Paul mentioned the times and the response times. Those are designated and characterized by Tier 1, 2, 3. And Paul talked about the response times. Essentially, it's under 7 minutes, under 11 minutes, and under 15 minutes for, I said tier, but it's really priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. So with that being said, Sally, you've asked to put this on the agenda. I'll turn the floor over to you for questions.
Yeah, well, my first question has to do with what you just said, Mike. You mentioned, talking about the bundle bill, it would be for our transports, meaning the towns. I didn't think we were transporting. Am I misunderstanding this? The reason I'm asking this is I'm remembering, Chief, meeting with you several years ago at Monowese Firehouse. You might recall that meeting. You requested me to attend to
Sure.
discuss a lot of issues, operational issues with the fire department. And one of the issues that you kept emphasizing was the problem with one of our paramedic firefighters having to go in the ambulance to the hospital because AMR did not have a paramedic with their ambulance, just EMTs. And that was why you were asking for more personnel. But it's my understanding, am I wrong to assume that with the PSA, we won't be doing that anymore?
Well, let me clarify. I said it's transport, it's really for all transports.
Okay, because you said for our transports. I thought we were done.
It's all transports, okay?
Okay, so how exactly does the bundle bill work? Is it true that North Haven Fire Department personnel will be no longer going in an ambulance, in this case, Access Nelson ambulances, to hospital destinations? Is that true?
No, they're still going to be assisting Nelson or Access Ambulance to the hospital. There's a couple of things that may happen. The bundle bill agreement covers only Medicare and Medicaid patients only. Remember that the way that Medicare and Medicaid is structured is that they can only pay off of one bill. In other words, for the last couple of years, when our paramedics assisted to the hospital with a Medicare or Medicaid patient, the AMR was the only company that was allowed to submit a bill. North Haven was not allowed to submit a bill for the services rendered by the paramedic. That bundle bill agreement only covers Medicare and Medicaid patients only. So that's the only piece of this that's still waiting to be decided upon. It's essentially done. We're just waiting for a couple final pieces. That's where only about $100,000, let's say, of lost revenue occurred over the last couple of years because it was only for those specific patients. Now, for patients that do not have Medicare and Medicaid, the town of North Haven is continuing to bill like it always has. You ask about transport. What we started to look at was when our paramedics, I'm going to use ballpark numbers here because it varies a little bit by insurance. So when a paramedic assists to the hospital, it would mean that, as you may recall, me explained to you, Sally, it would mean that our rescue responds and an ambulance responds. The ambulance would have provided 2 EMTs, and our rescue would have had, obviously, a paramedic on it. If If the patient required ALS, advanced life support, the paramedic would typically get in the back of an ambulance and ride to the hospital. That would be called an ALS intercept. Last couple of months, what we started to do was, if that does take place, we have both rescues now are certified ambulances by the state of Connecticut. We'll transport that individual ourselves. The reason being is, let's say for the ALS assist to the hospital, that we would collect, let's say, $700. Well, now if we transport that patient, we're going to collect, let's say, $1,200. It still requires the same two personnel to leave the scene and go to the hospital. But now what it does is it allows an ambulance that we had on scene with 2 EMTs to go right back in service, to remain available to the taxpayers of North Haven. So in the end, my personnel are still coming out of service for the same period of time as they did if they were to ride, but now we're able to collect at a higher revenue.
Okay, but I thought one of the advantages that you articulated quite a while ago about acquiring the PSA was so that we could dictate that a paramedic would be on board, a Nelson paramedic would be on board all the time. So if a transport was necessary, that our guy wouldn't have to go, because you used to say not only did our guy, our North Haven paramedic have to go in the ambulance, but then somebody had to go and pick him up. And that you stressed to me was a terrible strain on the number of fire department personnel in town in case a fire would happen. You know, so I thought the whole purpose of having the PSA is so that there would always be a paramedic, and therefore we would never have to go in the ambulance again, because they would have their own.
If we're talking one call at a time, that's the case. But the issue becomes when we're talking about multiple calls occurring at any given time. Again, it's going to take us some time to establish the numbers, but I've started to ask for some reports from Nelson Ambulance. On any given hour, there can be between 4 and 7 occurrences taking place in town which require an ambulance. So there's not going to be a paramedic on every single ambulance provided by Nelson. That's not going to happen. It's not realistic to think it's going to happen.
Okay,
Nelson is required to provide at least one ALS ambulance at all times, and it does cut down on the amount of times that our staff do have to provide assistance to the hospital. If you recall, what's changed since we last spoke as well was we started to hire additional firefighters to make sure that we have another engine in service for those fire incidents that you recall me speaking of that put us in jeopardy.
Well, that leads to one of the many questions that I have, and since you brought that up, I was wondering how obtaining this PSA and would affect the need for continued career firefighters at Montauk, because, again, if my memory serves me correctly, one of the primary justifications for opening a second career firehouse in Montauk was to have paramedic equipment on an engine so that there would be paramedic service to that part of town. So I was wondering what the impact of having the PSA would have on that necessity and all of the expenses that are incurred by our taxpayers as a result.
Yeah, I don't expect there to be an impact at all. The engine that was put in place down there was an engine for a couple of purposes. One, for the need for a paramedic to be on duty, an additional paramedic, and also for fire suppression and accidents and things of that sort. So there's not going to be a change in the staffing for the fire department, which is why you may recall me saying in my statements that I was reading, the North Haven Fire Department still has responsibility to provide first responder assets to every call and provide a paramedic when we have one available. We seem to keep thinking about there being one call taking place in North Haven at any given time. I need you to realize that there are multiple medical emergencies taking place in North Haven at any given time, as well as fire incidents.
Right.
So again, we're stretched just as thin when you start talking about 3 apparatus or 4 apparatus responding to all these incidents. And again, remember, Nelson is not going to provide a paramedic on every ambulance. No ambulance company would. The fact that AMR was for all these years was for ulterior motives.
Well, that was very disappointing. That's very disappointing for me to hear, because I thought that was one of the primary purposes. I recall the chairman of the Board of Finance consistently saying that the PSA would enable us to control that there's a paramedic on the ambulance, but you're saying just one. So what exactly are the operational and financial benefits of the PSAR and the contract with Nelson for the citizens and taxpayers of North Haven? What's going to be different?
So it's unfortunate that we have to keep looking at the financial impact, because I think that what we're undervaluing and understating is the patient safety and the patient care impact of what this means. Because what this does require is 2 ambulances in North Haven at any given time. And AMR didn't provide that for us. This also provides at least one of them as being an ALS at any given time. Something else AMR didn't provide for us. It also requires the GIS locations, the radio communication with our apparatus and with our dispatch, and the performance standards of making sure our ambulances arrive on time. We no longer have to wait 20, 25 minutes for an ambulance. My staff doesn't, and the taxpayers don't. Because we make sure the ambulances are responding to calls appropriately, and we track every one of them. We didn't have that with AMR. So I think those individual items alone speak for themselves in terms of what the PSA has done for North Haven.
I do recall when there was an unfortunate incident in August, I forget the year, but when there was a fire and there was a medical emergency that we were not able to send a paramedic to, kind of like a catalyst for a lot of discussion about the fire department. I do have very specific recollection of the first selectman saying at a Board of Finance meeting that at any given time AMR had 7 ambulances in town. Was that incorrect?
I think it depends on the incident. If it's the incident I'm thinking referring to, AMR did put ambulances in the town of North Haven.
No, I'm not referring.
I don't recall at this time.
Excuse me,
Again, the issue with that was that the North Haven PSAP, our dispatch center, had no way of being able to track the response of ambulances to incidents in which the fire department was or wasn't able to respond to.
Right.
Now, for every medical incident that requires an ambulance in the town of North Haven, Nelson Ambulance is communicating with our dispatch by radio saying that they are responding and saying that they are on scene. That never happened before.
Right.
So now this allows our PSAP to be able to know that for every single incident in the town of North Haven that requires an ambulance, we have a tracked and documented response of that ambulance. That's the most important piece. If you go back to that incident, was there was allegations being made, and the town of North Haven had a responsibility to ensure that an ambulance arrived, and we quite frankly couldn't establish the time frame for one.
No, you're misinterpreting me, Chief. I wasn't talking about that incident specifically. I brought it up because that incident led to discussions at the Board of Finance.
Sure.
And I do, because you had just made a statement before that AMR did not have 2 ambulances in town. And I do remember very specific discussions at the Board of Finance, at several Board of Finance meetings after that incident. Not about that incident, but discussions that were
I can tell you
promoted, where the first selectman said that at any given time there were 7 AMR ambulances stationed around town. So my question is, you're saying we never had 2, so...
No, let me explain.
Yeah, do you remember what I'm referring to?
There was a major explosion
right.
in May of 2019 where AMR did mobilize a lot of units. So we didn't say there's always 7 ambulances in town at the same time. On major catastrophes, they did mobilize.
Okay.
But what Paul is saying now, we have 2 on a regular basis, which is more than they had on a regular basis.
Okay, so it's a regular, okay.
And let's not discount one other thing. Paul mentioned GIS mapping. That is a critical thing. So they have GIS indicators in each ambulance. So the fire department can track the whereabouts. We spoke, Paul and I, at a meeting several times with AMR's management. We asked for GIS tracking systems in the ambulances. They, for whatever the reason, said they couldn't do that. This is a major addition to this whole contract carrier with Nelson by having tracking devices in each ambulance that the fire department knows at all times the location and where they are en route. Paul, am I correct on that?
Yes, you are. Yes. Jeff, can you provide some insight on your perspective of this process, please?
Sure. I mean, the focus that you provided during your presentation was accurate, but I think it's important for the Board of Selectmen and anyone else that's listening or watching this to understand this isn't a question of if the municipality wants to take over the PSAR, you file a form and the incumbent objects and there's a ruling. This is a statutorily designed, heavily regulated process. And what happened was, the chief mentioned back in 2014, there was a PSAR task force that made recommendations to the legislature to change the existing legislation. And the significant change that was made for our purposes is that previously the statute, which is 19A 181F, provided that a municipality could seek reassignment of the PSAR by showing either a performance crisis or unsatisfactory performance by the incumbent PSAR. What happened was the task force found that for a whole bunch of reasons, municipalities shouldn't have to show that the incumbent isn't performing. They should be able to obtain the PSAR by showing that they've developed an alternative plan that will improve or maintain patient care, and the municipality has the opportunity to align a new primary service area responder that is better suited than the current primary service area responder to meet the community's current needs. That's the statute. That's the amendment that was made to the statute. So the process is you file a petition and an alternative plan, and then the Department of Public Health, statutory and regulatory requirements determine whether or not, in fact, the impact of the plan on patient care, the impact of the plan on EMS system design, including sustainability, the impact of the plan on the local, regional, and statewide emergency medical service system, and the recommendations of the sponsor hospital, in this case Yale New Haven Hospital, and the regional council, in this case Region 2. Whether all of those considerations merit a finding that the alternative plan and the application support reassignment of the PSAR. So, in this case, Yale New Haven Hospital's medical director wrote a letter of support for North Haven's petition and alternative plan, as did the regional council after a unanimous vote by the Region 2 Council, which is a large council representing a large area of Connecticut. So this wasn't just a question of North Haven wanted something, we filled out a form, we submitted it, and we got it despite AMR objecting. There was obviously a statutory burden, a regulatory burden that had to be met to satisfy the Department of Public Health that North Haven was better suited to hold the PSAR. The other comment I wanted to make is, there's a lot of talk about what the advantages of the contract that the town has with Nelson now. It should be noted the town did not have a contract with AMR, ever, for BLS.
Okay.
So the town's ability to enforce its EMS plan was non-existent because AMR held the PSAR and there was no contractual obligation and no teeth for the town to do anything when it came to failing to provide data, failing to provide reports, failing to provide information about patient care, failing to provide GAS information, failing to provide response time information. So, what really was clear from the beginning of the process, and was obviously clear to not one but two hearing officers, was there was a void in North Haven's EMS system. And that void, in the opinion of the Department of Public Health, is filled by having North Haven hold all three PSARs.
Okay. Well, thank you for that summary. I did have some more questions. Obviously, as the chief said in his opening remarks, the PSA statute dates back, I believe he said, to the 1970s, over 40 years ago, and it obviously has evolved from a statute designed to prevent ambulances from beating each other to an accident scene or something. So it's obviously evolved. I understand that. I do have some specific questions about the agreement itself. First, in the recitals, there is a mention of, we've talked about it a bit, the Emergency Medical Services Delivery Plan in accordance with 19A 181B. Is there any way that I could be provided a copy of that? I assume it's a written plan?
Yes.
Can
It is. I can provide you with the alternative EMS plan that we filed with the state, yes.
The one that
It's a
is
public document.
the one that's referenced in the recital of the operational agreement with Nelson, it says, so I could get a copy of that. Okay. And when the bundle, I thought that there was already a bundle agreement. Chief, you might be aware that I had requested it because the contract makes reference to it, but I do understand now it isn't finalized and it will be incorporated by reference, backdated somehow, or whatever. Can I be provided with that bundle bill agreement as well when it's finalized?
Sure.
Okay.
If you'd like to be provided with it, I can do so, yes. It won't be
Okay.
until it's finalized.
Right. I was under the impression that it was already, but if you read the contract, it seemed like it was already there, so that's why I had asked for it. I did have a specific question on page 3 of the operational agreement. Under performance standards, you've talked about the priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, and the different time requirements. Can you give just some examples of what kinds of medical emergencies qualify as priority 1, priority 2, and priority 3? And then if you can, Chief, what percentage of each priority, from your knowledge of the data, what percentage of each of the 3 priorities results in a transport to a hospital?
Sure, so I can elaborate on the priorities.
Thank you.
They are priority 1, which would be lights and sirens. That would be, remember that the other thing that's taken place around the same time that this contract went into effect was, if you recall, we hired additional dispatchers, and those dispatchers now are providing what's referred to as emergency medical dispatching, EMD. We purchased software, we've hired dispatchers, and our dispatchers now no longer have to transfer the call to another ambulance company or 911 center to triage the call. It's essentially what's happening is when somebody places a 911 call for a medical emergency, the call is triaged to determine what priority it needs to become. So for example, a priority 1 call would be, I'm going to use one example, it would be a chest pain call, chest pain with shortness of breath. For example, a priority 2 call may be somebody who fell with unknown injuries, maybe a priority 2 call. There's nothing apparent, somebody wants somebody to come and still check out their elderly father, their elderly mother, or what have you. A priority 2 call with the no fire department response that you see on there. Remember, and this has not changed, that a long time ago, I want to say 2012 or so, I'd have to look at my notes, the North Haven Fire Department stopped responding to behavioral emergencies, mental health emergencies, and ETOH, people who were intoxicated. So there still needs to be an ambulance sent to those calls. We do not send a fire department resource, but an ambulance still needs to go. Obviously, it's a lower priority call, and we want to make sure that that call is tiered correctly with other ones that may be taking place in town at the same time. So therefore, we've allowed the ambulance company to respond in 14 minutes, 59 seconds to those types of events. I do not have a breakdown for you.
Okay.
It's important to know that this whole system is still evolving. It's in place 100%, but the ability to go in and pull data right now is not reliable. It will not give us a benchmark. It is going to take us at least 6 to 9 months to figure out, for example, how many of those calls are taking place in town and how many of them lead to transport. One example I can give you is that there are multiple doctor's offices, healthcare facilities in town that were not calling 911 up until even last week. They were calling AMR directly, and AMR sent an ambulance. And that constitutes a large part of the incidents I was referring to, in which the fire department was not aware of a call even occurring in town for the last 20, 30 years. But that individual who placed that call should still be receiving the services of the North Haven Fire Department because they are in the town of North Haven at that point in time. So we still are working our way into these facilities. We think that we've got a pretty good handle on it now. This is normal. The city of Milford went through this same exact process. People just need to realize that they now need to call 911, we'll triage the call, and an ambulance that we now have contracted with is going to respond versus our prior company.
Okay. I do remember, Chief, having prior discussions with you where you explained that the fire department had a medical advisor and there was a reduction in the types of calls that the department was going to, number one. But when you're saying that some of these medical facilities, I assume you're talking about doctor's offices, perhaps Devine Street, perhaps nursing rehab centers, those kinds of facilities had medical emergencies and they were calling AMR directly and not 911. That's been going on for years?
That's correct.
And so you want those calls to all go through, that's going to increase. I mean, you've been complaining about the increase in volume of calls for years. Won't this increase it even more?
No, it won't, because we've hired dispatchers now to handle that volume of calls. And now what we can do is we can appropriately triage the call to either keep our resources back so that we don't have to respond, or to send our resources if they're needed. Remember that a lot's changed since we've last spoken, I think, in the meeting you're referring to at the Monterey Firehouse. We started to hire additional firefighters. We've hired additional dispatchers to take care of these issues.
Okay. Another more specific question. On page 4 of the operational agreement, it would be 3 subsection D subsection double I. It talks about the North Haven Fire Department emergency medical service provider with the highest level of care shall function as the medical officer in charge at the scene, and that Nelson personnel shall take direction of this medical officer. Is that really putting the best interest of the patient first? What if the Nelson person has a higher level of care or more years experience? I just wanted to know how that will work and how egos might come into play with the North Haven person.
I understand your question. So
Thank you.
We arrived at that language. Remember that is the highest level of care. So if the North Haven Fire Department does not have a paramedic on scene, and Nelson does have a paramedic on scene, then the incident remains in the hands of Nelson Ambulance, and local medical control policy dictates that. The opposite may occur, though, where Nelson may have a paramedic on scene, and the North Haven Fire Department has a paramedic on scene as well. In that case, what this is referencing is the North Haven Fire paramedic, regardless of years of service, maintains as that medical officer, maintains control of that scene. It doesn't really come into play too much, but I will stand by that statement in that section of the contract, because your North Haven firefighters work for the town of North Haven and the taxpayers of North Haven. Mm-hmm. The ambulance provider, the ambulance company personnel do not work for the town of North Haven, but our firefighters do. And I firmly believe that our firefighters have the best interest of our taxpayers at all times.
Okay. I forgot to ask one more thing. Going back to the priority distinctions on page 3, for example, the priority 1, which obviously is the more serious triage call, like you gave an example of chest pain, Nelson shall respond within 6 minutes and 59 seconds, no less than 90% of the time. Is that a standard? I was a little disappointed at the 90% rather than 100%. Is that why could it not be 100% of the time that they would respond to the most serious case within 7 minutes?
That's standard language for these types of contracts. But Jeff, do you want to elaborate at all?
Usually it's 80%.
Okay,
90% is higher than what you see in other contracts.
okay. But you, again, let's see, page 2 of the contract. Why did I write that down? Well, you've already, this question, will there ever be a need for North Haven Fire Department personnel to travel with a patient in the ambulance? So that's clearly still a yes, right? We're still going to have
I'm sorry,
our
what are you
personnel
referring to?
in the ambulance, correct?
There will be times that our fire personnel may still assist in the ambulance, yes.
Okay, and that means they're going to go down to the hospital, or whether it's Yale or Midstate, whatever, and then we're going to have to send somebody to go pick them up, right?
Correct.
So that's still-
Correct. At times that's going to happen. Other
Okay.
times, if our rescue's on scene, we may transport them ourselves. Yes.
Okay. So we will, when you say transport them ourselves, do you mean in our rescue vehicles?
That's correct.
Okay, because the old rule was our rescue vehicles never transported, right?
What the PSAR.
We own the PSA now.
Okay, I understand that.
We've
So
written
that
into
is,
our EMS plan.
well, that's a major distinction that I did not understand. So now our rescues are, will be leaving town,
Yes.
possibly, depending upon who's in the ambulance and how many other calls are active and whatnot. So that is,
Okay, correct.
it's possible
Our
that,
rescues will leave town if a BLS unit is on scene from the ambulance company.
right,
And our paramedic would have to ride into the back of that ambulance. There's no reason to send 2 ambulances to the hospital for 1 patient. So we will put the Nelson ambulance back in service with 2 EMTs to respond to other calls. And our fire rescue, which is a licensed ambulance, it says ambulance now, both of them do,
Yeah.
will transport that patient. So we can put the ambulance back in service for the taxpayers of North Haven.
right. But, we do own 2 of those rescue vehicles, ambulances, I call them the big box ambulances, right? But
do
we
have
only.
2, 1 is in service at any given time.
Right, we
Yes,
only
the
have
other
1 in
remains a spare.
service. 1 is still just a backup in the event of repairs and whatnot. Even with 10 firefighters, when we finish our phase in and have 10 firefighters on all 4 shifts, there's only going to be 1 North Haven Medical Rescue unit manned and operational per shift, correct? And
That's
so you're
correct.
saying now, because of the PSA, that vehicle may be leaving town and transporting a patient to a hospital?
That's correct.
Okay. Just
No
wanted to
different than
make
it
that-
was before.
Okay.
We're just going to collect more revenue.
Right.
Sally, I think also, though, in the past, I think Paul was making the distinction that it was still leaving town, because if they went in the ambulance with AMR, our rescue vehicle still had to go to the hospital to bring the paramedic back.
Did our rescue vehicle go to the hospital, bring her back, or did somebody else
Did you
go?
send
get
somebody
them?
else, Paul?
I wouldn't think that we would send an ambulance just
We sent the ambulance.
to go pick up somebody.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. That's the way. Nothing's changed in that regard.
Okay, well,
it's
that-
always been that way.
Okay.
So then- and that
Well,
was
I don't think that
Paul's
was a
point
great
about
idea to
2
do that.
vehicles not going versus 1. So
Yeah.
I think that's
I-
the
What
point
What would
that
you
he
like
made
us
with
to
this
send,
initial
Sally? I mean, we could send a fire engine, and then we won't have the water available
No.
for town.
Yeah.
We only just recently got a pickup truck after asking for it for numerous years.
Right.
I mean, we only have so many vehicles.
Right. And this is just a weird a question for the town attorney, perhaps. I just noticed on page 9, under compliance, on 9 of the agreement, it mentions the parties intend to comply fully with all applicable state and federal laws, including but not limited to the Balanced Budget Act of 1997, Social Security Act, the Federal Anti-Kickback Statute, Federal False Claims Act. Attorney D'Onofrio, how does the Balanced Budget Act of 97 relate to all this?
That's actually a provision that the contractor's responsible for. They have in their billing of patients, they have, unlike a typical municipal contractor, they have responsibility for complying with various federal laws, including the False Claims Act, the federal anti-kickback statute, and a provision in the Balanced Budget Act with respect to billing of Medicare and Medicaid.
All right, no, I understand the applicability of the others. It was the and I, it's my understanding that the fees that will be charged are based on the Connecticut health recommendations that are published every year. So not any federal, I'm just trying to figure out what the Balanced Budget Act of 97 has to do with this. That just jumped out at me. What's that doing in here? That's all.
Yeah, it's one of the federal laws that they're required as an ambulance service.
Okay, all right. If you could just give me a moment to quickly, has any of the 3 administrators of the fire department, the chief, the deputy chief, or the assistant chief, ever been affiliated or employed with Nelson?
I believe one of the deputy chiefs have.
Okay. Well, I thought there was a distinction between the deputy chief and an assistant chief. Are they called 2 deputy chiefs? Is that it?
That's correct.
Okay. And I just wanted to ask another question. Chief, as you know, I attended many fire commission meetings in recent years. And I do remember one specific meeting where emergency medical services were being discussed. And I believe it was Vice Chairman Zuccarelli who said that he couldn't understand why a ladder truck would ever go to a medical call. And I agreed 100% with him. Our ladder trucks still, we have our brand new $1.2 million ladder truck. I assume it is one of the more expensive apparatus to operate. In your view, will the ladder truck still have to go on a medical call? Because that was a big concern.
More medical calls now than it was.
I'm sorry?
It is going on more medical calls now than it was previously.
Prior to the PSA?
Yes. Would you like me to explain why?
Yeah, I'd love to, because I'm bringing it up not only because I remember Vice Chair Zuccarelli's extreme concern about it, but also I was out for a walk 2 days ago in my neighborhood, and I saw at a single-family home about 8:30 in the morning, an access ambulance, our engine, the red engine, and the new ladder truck, all at a medical call at a single-family residence. And that ladder truck was just, idling for 50 minutes. I just didn't understand why. So I am very much looking forward to knowing why ladder trucks are still going on medical calls and why you're saying it's even increased.
Sure. So remember that for specific medical incidents, in other words, the highest priority of medical calls, something that is typically going to require CPR, we send 2 fire department resources. The reason for that is CPR is tiring. And we want to make sure that we have enough staff to appropriately manage the patient, effect CPR, and take care of the family members that inevitably are on scene that are trying to do their best, but often contribute to the scene as well. So we need to have enough personnel on scene to handle those types of incidents, which is why if you typically see 2 fire department assets at a medical call, know that it was coded as the most severe type of medical incident there could be.
Priority 1, okay.
As far as the medical incidents go, you know very well that we have a rescue in service that has a paramedic.
Yep.
We also have an engine in service, right? And we have a truck in service.
And the engine has a paramedic, right?
Shifts.
Sorry.
If a BLS call comes in, an incident comes in that does not require a paramedic, but does require, let's say, somebody who's got a medical emergency but does not require a paramedic. We believe that sending the ladder truck is the best use of resources. Maybe not physically, maybe not in terms of how big the apparatus is, but in terms of resource management and personnel management, we believe it's the best resource to send. Why? Because why would I send the rescue with the paramedic on it? Or why would I send the engine with the only water source on it? So we send a truck to the call because the truck is able to manage that incident, manage that patient with the 2 EMTs that are on that truck. They can go back in service as soon as it's over with.
Well, don't we have 2 engines and 2 water sources now, one at Montaouise and one at headquarters?
Only on 2 shifts. And remember that engine down at Montaouise is situated there primarily because of the geographical distance it is located in and how long it takes for headquarters units to get down to that end of town.
Right. Okay. Well, both myself and I trust, based on his comments at that meeting that I attended, both myself and Vice Chair Zuccarelli, I believe, I don't want to speak for him, I just remember him being very discouraged by the use of ladder trucks for medical calls, and now you're saying that it will increase. It is increasing because of the PSA?
It's increasing because not so much the PSA, but because we're EMDing our calls now. We're triaging the calls ourselves. And so we are appropriately sending resources. I mean, just as many people that say what you're saying, Third Selectman, complain about the fact that we send paramedics to calls that we don't need to send paramedics to. So there needs to be a balance somewhere. Okay. And the balance is that for calls that do not require a paramedic, we send a ladder truck to, with 2 personnel to manage that call so that the paramedic can stay in service.
I got you. Okay. And if you could just give me a moment so I could just quickly.
Yeah, along the same, Paul, on the same line of questioning, like if the call doesn't require, it's a BLS call, and based on the better dispatching and the tracking, would there be situations where the fire department would just have Nelson respond versus the fire department responding as well?
Yes, sir, that's a good question. So that covers, in the contract, that covers the priority 3s, because we do have a number of those incidents occur. Again, it falls very much on incidents such as behavioral health and intoxicated individuals. There's some others as well, but that covers the vast majority. Again, where we decided that we do not need to send a fire department asset to manage that incident, we can send just an ambulance, yes.
Would there also be ALS situations where Nelson would only respond but not the fire department?
There would not, sir. No, the North Haven Fire Department is in possession of the ALS PSAR. We have a requirement to provide ALS whenever it is available.
So based on the, if our paramedic responds along with their paramedic, and since we control the scene, then in that case, we would always do the transport?
No, not necessarily. We can transfer care very easily. That language that was picked up on is really just for management of the patient. So let's say, for example, and again, I don't want you to think that this happened, but I'm going to give you an example for this purpose. Let's say that a paramedic with the ambulance company does not think that the North Haven taxpayer requires ALS. In that event, our paramedic on scene may be able to say, no, I really think that this person does require ALS, and you either need to do it or I'm going to do it myself.
Mm.
Remember that ALS is medicine. It's truly practicing medicine. There is a high level of subjectivity that takes place for the treatment of patients. That's just what it is.
And I know we're giving you a lot of specific questions, but some of these things, I think, as you said earlier, are going to be worked out in the next 6 to 9 months, I think, as you further establish your protocols.
You're correct, yes.
Yeah, and I think that's fair too. I mean, this is obviously a new process, and I think it's very fair to say that it's going to take the 6 to 9 months, as you said, to to figure out where we're going and what we could do to make adjustments if necessary. Would you agree, Chief, to come back in about 9 months and give us an update of how you think it's working out?
Sure, the first selectman would like me to do so, I'd be happy to do so.
Okay, well, I'll ask him in 9 months. So it's, what I'm getting from you is one of the biggest differences is this triage state, this triage process, and the dispatching is a major difference with the PSA. That's what I'm really trying to understand, Chief. I know a lot of my questions are interpreted as negative or micromanaging. That is not my intent. My intent is to really try to understand this, you know? So I'm trying to understand what exactly is different. I mean, we still are gonna have, 3,000 medical calls, and you once told me that about 10% are transports to hospital, about 300. I mean, the nature of the medical emergencies certainly are not changing. It's how we are responding to them, and I'm just trying to understand the nuts and bolts of what this PSA equates to in how that response is changing, which is why I want to see the bundle bill, why I want to see this plan, so I'm really just, again, trying to educate myself and also in the process help the citizens understand. So in a nutshell, is it the triage triage level that is the biggest difference with having the PSA? From an operational standpoint, not a financial.
They're two entirely separate issues that we just happen to take care of at the same exact moment in time. Remember, the PSA we were waiting on that decision for a number of months.
Right.
It just happened to be that the EMD of the dispatchers went in place at the same time. They are two entirely different entities, but they do work in tandem. So the ability to EMD a call and to determine what level of resources need to be responded to for that incident does play in hand in this contract, because this contract does cover what we require for the ambulance in terms of response times, and it does play directly into our ability to either send North Haven assets, fire assets, or not, and then which ones to send. The number that I referenced of you of 10%, at that time that I recall that we talked, was likely the paramedic intercepts, because we were doing 300 intercepts a year at that point in time. We spoke, I want to say, at least 4 years ago. I mean, again, a lot has changed.
Right. How
but
many?
If you're truly interested in understanding this system and getting the value for it, I just think that you just need to just realize that this system has become essentially the gold standard. I want to go back to the fact that I've received at least a dozen phone calls from other municipalities wanting to know how we did this and seeing this as what we're doing as being the best of the best.
Okay.
And I know you like to do your research, and I'd ask you, if you really want to do research, do this. Look into this, because what we're providing to the taxpayers of North Haven is above and beyond what most municipalities are.
Yeah. I've done a considerable amount of research, Chief. I have the Town of Monroe's bundle bill agreement with Weems Valley Emergency Medical Services. I have Easton's agreement with Nelson. I've looked at other municipalities.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Why? I mean, what do you think that there's improprieties taking place, or why?
See, this is
again,
no.
I just like coming after the fire department and looking at our bundle bill agreements, our contracts. I don't see you doing this with any other town. I just told you this is the best of the best.
Right.
You still feel the need to have to question and look at everything. And I just really want to know why. I think a lot of people
because the fire department has been a little bit unique in the past few years in the dramatic changes in apparatus, in personnel, in the budget. I mean, just going from 17-18, which was 4 fiscal years ago, to the current year, the fire department budget has increased 37%. There's no department anywhere near that. So when a department has such major changes, personnel, apparatus, and now with the PSA, I think it is incumbent upon me and my oath of office to educate myself in how departments operate. And in fact, the chairman, Nuzzolillo, has commended me for my efforts in researching to better understand. So if you're asking why and not other departments, no other departments have had the changes in recent years that the fire department has had. You take my questions from a negative perspective when I'm just trying to educate myself about how this is going to work, what the advantages are, and like I said, I think it's very reasonable. I've already acknowledged the reasonableness of letting this, go its course, and then in 6 to 9 months, evaluate it. And you said that if the first selectman would like you to come back and report on how it's going, that you would do that. I think that's very reasonable on my part, and I'm never going to feel like I have to defend myself in educating myself about a department that has undergone such drastic changes as your department has undergone in recent years. I think I would have to defend myself if I didn't pay close attention to what was going on. And you've been very helpful and upfront in answering these questions. I have a much better understanding. And again, I want to thank the first selectman for agreeing to have you come in and explain to the Board of Selectmen and to the citizens details about this major change for the fire department, and we'll keep our eyes on it and stay informed.
All right, well, I just want to say to the residents here, we've had over an hour discussion on this, a lot of questions, a lot of good content from Paul, our fire chief, and from our town attorney. He should be commended, and as a result, as what our fire chief mentioned, that many municipalities now are asking, how did North Haven do this? I'm going to leave everyone with this, and we certainly will talk 9 months later, Sally, if you'd like.
Sure.
I would be happy to have Paul back. As I see the advantages, we now, in conjunction with the emergency management plan that our fire chief put together, this change is going to help us monitor response times better on priority 1, 2, and 3. It's already memorialized in the document, in the agreement. As Attorney D'Onofrio said, 90% on priority 1 is 10% higher than anybody else in the state has. So this is a very good thing. We certainly understand questions. We want to educate the public. And I want to say one more thing that I mentioned earlier. Having GIS tracking systems in these cars, these ambulances, is something we've asked for years, and we finally have it. And I'd like to commend Paul Januszewski, Jeff D'Onofrio for their hard work, along with Scott Martis on this. And several months later, Sally, we were more than happy to have Paul back.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you
Paul,
all.
Jeffrey, and Pat, thank you for your time here this evening. All right. Very good. So now we will continue. We are on item number 6, and I'm going to have Bill and Sally handle the rest of these meetings. And I'm going to start, Sally, we'll give you a break for a second.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have Bill do item number 6, and you can come back with the item number 7.
Sure.
All right, and if you want, I could do both 6 and 7 since they're tied together.
Okay.
You want me to do 6 and 7?
No, I'd be glad to.
Okay, you do 6, I'll do 7. Go ahead.
Okay. Number 6 is, item on the agenda is to consider and act upon a resolution authorizing Michael J. Frieda to execute and file an application with the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development for the execution of an assistance agreement in the amount of $117,150 for the replacement of North Haven Memorial Library boilers.
Okay.
Sally?
Numbers, number 6 is to consider the resolution, so before we
Right.
read the resolution, we should discuss, this. I assume this is the STEEP grant for, that we received from the state, $117,150 for the replacement of the boiler. I believe I saw this in some CCM documents that came
Yeah.
to me. And we are contributing a little bit, 2,500, I think.
There's a small match, yes.
Small match from us. And, I remember the library director last year during the budget process stressing the need for this, so I am fully in full support of this. So I don't know if you wanted to make any comments,
Yeah.
and then I'll read the resolution.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, this is really a tremendous collaborative effort on receiving this grant. And the collaboration involved are state legislators. CCM was a huge advocate, myself as president with the governor's office and OPM, and Jonathan Harris at the governor's office in terms of trying to get these steep grants for the municipalities. The state responded very quickly to us, and this basically for each and every one of us as residents takes out $117,000 worth of potential taxpayer savings out of an upcoming budget. And just so you know what was happening, that boiler had failed over at the library. So the town, until receiving this grant, the town had been paying $5,000 a month for a temporary boiler over there. So once this gets into effect and gets put into place by the people installing it, we will no longer be incurring the $5,000 per month, and it might be even more than that. That was the original projection. And we move forward and we take this capital expense out of next fiscal year's budget. So it's a win-win all the way around.
Okay, unless Bill has other comments, I'll go ahead and read.
I'd also seen this, and I think it's a great win for the town of North Haven in terms of what everybody did on behalf of getting this.
And I'm sure
response.
New boilers will tend to be more efficient as well, so there'll be savings on that end as well.
That's a very good point, yes.
So I will read item 7, which is the Resolution for Small Town Economic Assistance Program Act, STEEP, replacement of North Haven Memorial Library boilers. Whereas pursuant of Connecticut General Statutes 4-66G, the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development is authorized to extend financial assistance for economic development projects. And whereas it is desirable and in the public interest that the town of North Haven make an application to the state for $117,150 in order to undertake the replacement of North Haven Memorial Library boilers, and to execute an assistance agreement, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Selectmen, 1, that it is cognizant of the conditions and prerequisites for the state financial assistance imposed by Connecticut General Statute 4-66G. 2, that the filing of an application for state financial assistance by the town of North Haven in an amount not to exceed $117,150 is hereby approved, and that Michael J. Frieda, First Selectman and Chief Elected Official, is directed to execute and file such application with the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development to provide such additional information, to execute such other documents as may be required, to execute an assistance agreement with the state of Connecticut for state financial assistance if such an agreement is offered, to execute any amendments, decision, and revision thereto, and to act as the authorized representative of the town of North Haven. I will make a motion to approve the resolution as I just read.
Okay, thank you, Sally. Bill, is there a second?
I'll second Sally's motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We had some discussion, so any other discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We'll move now to item number 8. William, I'll turn that over to you.
Number 8 is to consider and act upon a resolution authorizing the sale and disposal of a surplus fire department vehicle.
All right, it looks like we're going to be selling the Pierce, the 1991 Pierce Dash. So if there's no other comments for consideration, I will read number 9, the resolution.
Go right ahead.
9, resolved, the town of North Haven authorized the auction and disposal of a surplus fire department vehicle. At present, there is one vehicle leaving the fleet and available for auction. The vehicle is identified as a 1991 Pierce Dash fire engine. The Director of Finance, Edward Swinkowski, is authorized to determine acceptable bid offers and/or take said vehicle to alternate auction location. All revenue received will return to the North Haven General Fund. I will make a motion to approve the resolution as read.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Number 10 is resignations and appointments. I'll start the first one, and you and I could alternate. We have quite a few, as we often do this time of year. So I will start with a motion for the reappointment of Fran Bartlett, 216 Quinnipiac Avenue, to the Commission on Aging for a 3-year term to expire December 31st, 2023.
The next one is the...
No, you got to second it.
Oh, do you want to second each one? I didn't know if you wanted to do them all
No,
as
these
one
we do
second.
individually.
Want to do them individually? Okay. I'll second Sally's motion to reappoint Fran Bartlett.
All right, during the discussion, I'd just like to comment that what we do, Valerie and I, all board and commission members, we send them a letter in advance or an email, and we ask them if they'd like to continue. And those that like to continue or would like to, we always honor their request. We will never arbitrarily bump someone off these commissions unless they tell us that they no longer would like to serve. In the case of Fran, I've had a special relationship with Fran for years. She's one of our senior citizens in town, remarkable lady with a tremendous amount of energy. And Fran, I thank you for all of your help on this commission, and I thank you for your willingness to continue. So with that being said, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next one is I'll make a motion regarding the reappointment of Deacon Ronnie Bicknell, 12 Patton Road, to the Commission on Aging for a 3-year term to expire December 31st, 2023.
I'll second that.
All right, in the discussion, I'd like to thank our deacon here. He came to us a few years back. He's faithfully served. Deacon, thank you very much for continuing, and we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye. I'll make a motion for the reappointment of Donna Levine, 23 Legrand Road, to the Commission on Aging for a 3-year term to expire December 31st, 2023.
I'll second that reappointment.
Donna has done a remarkable job on this commission also. She is an attorney, brings a great deal of expertise. Donna, we first met when I first took office. I'd like to thank you for staying on this committee and commission. Thank you. We'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next reappointment that I'll make a motion for is of Kimberly Yates Carew, 55 Mansfield Road, to the Commission on Aging for a 3-year term to expire December 31st, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kim, I'd like to thank you. We miss having you at Clintonville School. I know you retired from teaching. You did a great job there. I know the students miss you. Thank you for your willingness to stay on this commission. So we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Give Jim my best, Kim.
I always used to see her when we'd go read
Yes.
Dr. Seuss. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. I will, next we have, I will make the motion for the reappointment of David Carney, 56 Hayward Road, Hamden, as the Animal Control Officer for a 1-year term to expire December 31st, 2021.
I'll second Sally's motion.
All right. David, what can I say? And I'll say the same thing on behalf of Crystal, who's coming up next. I am so grateful for the work that you and Crystal do in this position. In these positions, you are remarkable, you and Crystal, in the town of North Haven, and this government appreciates your efforts. So we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next.
Mike, any specific reason why these are only 1-year terms?
I don't really know the answer to that. It's been like that for decades.
Yeah.
But
We have to renew these every year
Every year.
according, it's something within the guidelines of the state. And they
Require
have
that
to-
we reappoint them
Right, so
every
even though
year.
they're paid positions, they have to be reappointed, and they have to be reappointed every year.
all right, so we're on Crystal.
Yep. So the next one also is relating to the animal control. It's the reappointment. I'll make a motion to for the reappointment of Crystal Rashba, 76 Clifton Street, Wallingford, Connecticut, as the Assistant Animal Control Officer for a one-year term to expire December 31st, 2021.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Crystal, thank you again. We'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye. I'll make a motion for the reappointment of Philip Kinsella, 135 Tokenique Drive, to the Building Board of Appeals for a 5-year term to expire December 31st, 2025.
I'll second that.
Phil, I'd like to thank you. It's not easy to commit to a 5-year term, so we're very grateful, and I thank you very much for sitting on this commission. So thanks again. We'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll make a motion for the reappointment of Christian N. Brandt, 25 Sella Terrace, to the Community Services Commission for a 3-year term to expire December 31st, 2023.
Second. Kristen, we see each other every morning, early in the morning when you're walking out there, so thank you very much, and I appreciate everything you've done, including your support of the North Haven Education Foundation. It's a great pleasure to have you on this, so thank you very much. We'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye. I'll make a motion for the reappointment of Donna L. Malley, 18 Algonquin Drive, to the Community Services Commission for a 3-year term to expire December 31st, 2023.
I'll second that reappointment.
Donna, thank you very much. I know that you were at Monterey School for years. Appreciate everything you did there as part of that faculty and administration. Those children, I know, missed you when you retired, but we're grateful for your service here. I hope all's well, and thank you very much. We'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye. I'll motion for the reappointment of Michael Nappy, 315 Skiff Street, to the Community Services Commission for a 3-year term to expire December 31st, 2023.
Second.
Mike, thank you very much. Mike is a very interesting man, a great guy, loves being involved with government. Came to us a couple years ago, wanted to know how he can get involved. When we had open meetings, Mike would come to many meetings. So Michael, thank you very much for serving. Give Andrea my best, and I'd like to thank you again. We'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye. I'll make a motion for the reappointment of Stephen Fontana, 23 Angel Place, to the Economic Development Commission for a 3-year term to expire December 31st, 2023.
I'll second Steve's reappointment.
Steve, thanks for serving. We've known each other for years. I appreciate what you're doing for the city of New Haven. As you know, we work very closely on a regional basis with all the cities and towns. So thank you very much for serving. Hope your dad's doing well, and I'd like to then call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is a motion, I'll make a motion for the reappointment of Walter L. Mann, 7 Benedict Drive, to the Economic Development Commission for a 3-year term to expire December 31st, 2023.
Second.
Walt, thank you very much. We appreciate you sitting. Walt, of course, is also the executive director of North Haven TV. And we always say about Walter that he's got a great sense of North Haven's history. He's our town historian in some respects. So thank you very much, Walt. We'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye. I'll make a motion for the reappointment of Thomas J. Wydra, 14 Katy Lane, to the Board of Ethics for a 3-year term to expire December 31st, 2023.
I'll second that.
Tom, thank you very much for agreeing to continue to serve. Tom brings a great background to this Ethics Commission. He's former police chief in the town of Hamden, North Haven resident, of course. So thank you very much, Tom. Thank you for continuing. We'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is I'll make a motion for the reappointment of Anthony P. Soley, 53 Fieldstone Court, to the Housing Authority for a 5-year term to expire December 31st, 2025.
Second.
Anthony, thank you very much. Again, re-upping for a 5-year term. It's a tremendous commitment. I thank you very much. I hope Regina's doing well, and I thank you again. All those in favor?
Aye. I'll make a motion for the reappointment of Joan Walsh, 577 Pool Road, to the Parks and Recreation Commission for a 4-year term to expire December 31st, 2024.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Joan, thank you very much for a 4-year term. That's also a big commitment, so we appreciate very much your willingness to continue to serve. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye. Item 11 on the agenda is bond releases. I will make, the first one regards number P 17-26, 201 Clintonville Road, amount of original bond of $20,000, current balance of bond $20,000. I will make a motion to release the entire bond balance with the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I reviewed the documentation in our packet, and all conditions have been met, so I strongly support my own motion to release this bond.
Very good. Is there a second?
I'll second Sally's motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item 12.
No, we have two
We got
more
two more to-
bonds.
two more bond
We got to do them
releases, yes.
separately.
Yes, correct.
Bill, it's your turn.
Yep. This one also relates to a bond release number I 17-08, also for 201 Clintonville Road. The amount of the original bond was $2,500. The current balance of the bond is $2,500. And with the recommendation of the Inland Wetlands Commission, the motion is to release the motion I'm making is to release the entire bond balance.
Second?
Okay, motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
And finally, we have I-17-05, 47-49 Saca Point Road. The amount of the original bond was $2,500. The current balance of the bond is $2,500. I will make a motion to release the entire bond balance with the recommendation of the Inland Wetlands Commission.
I'll second that motion.
A motion we have and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye. Item 12 on the agenda is property tax refunds, and I'll make a motion to approve all of the property tax refunds listed in our agenda.
And again, I think as always is the case, or has been the case in the past, nothing unusual there, and I'll second Sally's motion.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, item number 13, the next Board of Selectmen meeting is Thursday, January 7th, here at Memorial Town Hall. And ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude this evening, myself and Bill and Sally would like to speak with you individually, so I will start it by saying, I realize, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a very difficult year. We've had a number of meetings and public service announcements on COVID, and I know that sometimes the tensions and anxieties out there and the loneliness and the isolation can be very difficult to deal with. But I still think each of us as individuals have a great deal to be thankful for with our family, our friends. And although we may not have some of the loved ones who are no longer with us, I hope we're all comforted with the memories, the wonderful memories of those loved ones whom are no longer with us. Because it's my opinion that through those memories, their spirit lives inside each and every one of us. And when we think about loved ones who've departed, parents, relatives, it's through that memory that ignites their spirit that they are still with us every day. So we do have a lot to be thankful for. This government supports each and every one of you. And on behalf of the entire government, the Town of North Haven employees, we'd like to wish you a very Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and a very happy and healthy holiday season. And thank you very much for everything you do as our wonderful citizens. And I'll ask Sally now to comment, then we'll turn it over to Bill after that. Sally?
Yes, I likewise, our next meeting is, as the First Selectman said, January 7th, 2021. So I would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, Happy holiday season. One thing I want to say is we've got to continue to be vigilant. We just went through, I'm sure, a difficult Thanksgiving for lots of folks. We didn't have the normal festivities that we're used to. I think the same thing is going to have to take place for Christmas. Nobody's more upset about that than me. You all know, if you read my column and you've heard me speak, I'm an Italian, Sicilian. There's nothing more important to us than Christmas Eve with all this fish, the 7 fishes, and it's just the biggest day of the year for us, but we will all be celebrating separately, and I highly urge you to remain vigilant and do the same. We have to get through these difficult months. In my opinion, maybe, in my family, we sadly are staying separate, but we talk about how great it will be, we hope, next year to be together. And maybe one of the long-term consequences of this pandemic is that it'll help us recalibrate our priorities. And next year, if we are allowed to be together as we're used to being on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or Hanukkah or any other holidays, we will appreciate being together and not really measuring the holiday by the number of gifts under the tree, but really measure it for our ability to share it together as a family. So maybe that might be a long-term benefit. We can readjust how we prioritize certain outlooks in our lives. So please be vigilant. I know it's difficult. We all want that fancy Christmas Eve meal, but we've got to be careful. We've got to follow the guidelines and keep it up and get through these tough months. So happy holidays and happy New Year to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. William?
Yeah, along the same lines, I obviously am also thankful for my family and my friends, but I think I'm also even increasingly thankful for, all my neighbors and everyone in North Haven and throughout Connecticut, because I think we're in our 10th month now in terms of this pandemic, and I think, I can't really think of many occasions where I haven't seen, everyone that I've been in contact with or associated with, not really, and especially as things have continued to go into our 10th month now, not to take this situation that we have seriously. So I'm very thankful for that, because ultimately, we all have to live together and take care of one another. And this virus, obviously, as many people have said, doesn't distinguish between what our political affiliations are or our race or our ethnic background or whatever. We're all in this together as human beings. So I think it's actually a year to be thankful for our humanity, and in 2021, not to forget that, as hopefully we come out of this pandemic, now that we have the ability to hopefully get, all of us will hopefully get a chance to, sometime within the next 6 months to get a vaccination that will hopefully bring us back in 2021 a better year, where we all can, socialize and associate on a much more normal basis. So I appreciate what everybody's done to safeguard me, and hopefully I've done the same, and let's all hope for, continued health and well-being in 2021.
Thank you, William.
Okay. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Stay safe, everybody.
Stay safe. Second, Bill?
I'll second, of course I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll see you next month, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, happy holidays. Thank you.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.